This is episode number 186. Pat Flynn makes six figures per month with his blog. He's got a brand new book coming out. Pat's on the episode today, and that's what we're talking about.
This is the Red Podcast. How to take your idea and make a name for yourself within your industry and beyond. Spread your message. Attract a following. Rise above the noise. Here's your host, David Hooper.
This is the Red Podcast, the podcast for influencers. If you're a blogger, podcaster, speaker, marketer, nonfiction author, or entrepreneur, this is the podcast for you. If you've got a message to spread, this is the podcast for you. Here's what I talk about. Book publishing, podcasting, speaking, and other marketing elements of your business that you must master to make a name for yourself. That's the focus. How to take your idea, make a name for yourself, and make money. And speaking of book publishing, I've got a great guest this episode. It's Pat Flynn. Reached out to me a couple weeks ago, wanted to talk about his new book. Said, I'll do you one better. Have you on the Red Podcast. Let's talk about the launch, because I knew that you, as a fellow influencer, would be interested to see what he's doing with this. Pat, if you don't know him, smartpassiveincome.com is the blog. 6 figures per month. He's been doing this consistently, at least 5-7 years. A long time for the internet. You can learn a lot by watching him, and that's why I wanted to have him on Red Podcast. It's had a lot of longevity. He's got die-hard fans. People love Pat. Love him. As far as connecting with an audience, there are not many people that do it better. smartpassiveincome.com. If you haven't been to his website, via the blog Smart Passive Income, he's done a lot. A lot of that money that he's made is via affiliate income. So he's not even charging for the information that he gives out. That's about to change, though. He's got a brand new book. It's coming out in a couple of months. It's called Will It Fly? In a way, it's his first product. I thought it would be good to have him on here to talk about that, what took him so long, how the idea for the product came out, how he's going to market it, what he's doing to launch it, and that's coming up. Before I get into my conversation with Pat, I want to let you know that if you are a coach, you're in the coaching business, one-on-one consulting, got something that's going to interest you. It's called Pro Coach Academy. A new class is forming right now. It's starting January 12th. It's going to cover the 4 most important things that every coach needs to succeed: marketing, how to create awareness of your coaching services and consistently attract the best clients into your business; distinction, you'll learn how to stand out and become the go-to coach in your niche; selling, you're going to learn how to easily sell your coaching program, but it's not really selling. It's how to easily get a yes from prospects in a non-salesy way. You'll attract them, and the clients will emerge when you go through this process. And finally, mindset. Most coaches are broke. You're going to discover the mindset of a prosperous coach, how you'll be able to sustain your coaching business for years to come. It's a great program, 12 weeks long, starting January 12th. If you're interested, if you want more information, procoachacademy.com, procoachacademy.com. Now, without further ado, here's my talk with Pat Flynn. And if you're interested in this, and you haven't already subscribed to Red Podcast, by the way, I'm going to have Pat back to talk a little bit more about the book, a little bit more about his launch, check in and see how things are going. Redpodcast.com will let you subscribe. Android, iTunes, whatever you got, you can do it there, redpodcast.com. Here's my conversation with Pat Flynn. On the line, I've got Pat Flynn. You know him from the Smart Passive Income blog, but I've got him here for a reason other than the blog, and that's his new book. Not out yet, but it's coming out in about a month, and I'm going to talk to Pat about the process. And first of all, Pat, what took you so long, man? You got a big launching pad, you got a big audience, and you've had that for a few years. I've been amazed by your longevity. Most people would have probably done a book by now, but not you.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. You were there in the beginning when I was just starting out in that early mastermind group that we were in together, and that's where I actually got the initial idea to start a book. But that was several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And
that was back when you were making 5 figures a month instead of 6.
And then finally the book's coming out, and that is actually the number one question I get. Well, why were you waiting so long? And there's a number of different reasons. One, I didn't want to just force a book because I could put a book out there, and I know I have created this giant platform, and I have this amazing audience who supports me in whatever I do, and I just didn't want to write a book because I could. I wanted to write a book because I knew there was something I needed to share in that particular format. And finally, something came through, and we'll talk about the content of the book in just a second. But there's also a lot of other things, too. I think a lot of it has to do with just my fear of what people will think about it. And, I have those same fears like everybody else. And for whatever reason, people find that hard to believe. But no, they're there, and that's what stopped me for a while. I actually tried a couple of years ago sitting to write another book, and I just couldn't write it. For whatever reason, a book scares the crap out of me. And it's, I could crank out a blog post, 5,000 words in a half a day easy. But this book, man, it's just a different beast. And I had to get a lot of coaching, and I had to get a lot of people to help encourage me along the way. And, also get a lot of confirmation from my audience that this is really what they wanted to hear about to, motivate myself to move forward and, bust through those fears and that resistance.
I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that pressure. From my work in the music industry, something that I see all the time is guys will they'll have a good album, a solid selling album. And you would think that when you've got that kind of platform, and I wasn't joking when I talked about a big audience and a launching pad, that's a good thing, but it's that double-edged sword in that everybody's watching you. Mm-hmm. We don't really see that from you, because it seems like, everybody likes Pat Flynn. Everybody wants you to succeed. I'm sure there's some people that maybe don't. And I'm sure that even if there aren't those people, they're the voices in your head that worry that even with that launch, if your book doesn't succeed, that many more people watching you to watch it fail. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because a lot of people think, man, if I were Pat Flynn, I could sell a lot of books.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about failing in the sense that, I am not going to make money from this book or anything. I mean, what I'm most worried about is failing the expectations of my audience, more than anything. Not just, can I write a book that does well? Can I write a book that becomes a bestseller? It's not about that. It's about, can I actually create something that's actually helpful? Through the years, I've been producing this content on the site that has just been put on this pedestal by people as some of the best content out there, and I wanted my book to reflect that. And I think that was part of the struggle too, and why, even though there are people out there who don't want me to succeed, I think in any industry, if you are going big, you're going to have people who don't want you to go big for whatever reason. But I think the voice in my brain is definitely the one that's the biggest of all. And I wanted to make something that was really helpful. And now, after working on this for over a year, I can say for sure that this is some of my best writing ever, and that this book will change lives. And the people I've shared it with already are raving about it. And even then, I'm still scared. I don't know. There's just this different thing with the book. And when it's on Amazon, people are very honest about their reviews, and I want them to be honest. But for the longest time, in a younger version of myself, any sort of negative comment would just derail me. Is that weird math where one negative comment would outweigh 100 positive, thankful comments. And I still feel like there's a little bit of that in me, although I've grown to have a thick skin and understand that it's not about the people who are haters. It's not about that. It's just about making sure I'm always serving my audience, and I know I've been able to do that with this book. Well,
let's talk about the topic selection, because you probably had a lot of ideas for things that you could write about, especially since you tried to start this a couple years ago and have been thinking about it for a while. Can you talk about the topic selection and how you ended up with Will It Fly?
Yeah, well, Will It Fly, it's essentially a book on how to validate your next business idea, how to make sure that thing you have an idea about is actually going to work. And where this came from was through a number of different realms. First of all, I've been running this show called Ask Pat, in addition to the Smart Passive Income podcast, over the past couple of years. And every day I collect about a dozen different questions from my audience that I then pick and feature one of those voicemail questions on my show. And, so it's pretty cool because I get this engine of comments and concerns that my audience has over time. And through the collection of those questions, one of the top questions that I'm getting is, well, how do I know if this idea is going to work? Or how do I make sure that the work I put into whatever it is I'm doing does not go wasted? And then I confirm that again in a survey that I recently did on the Smart Passive Income blog, and that was very eye-opening, actually. And also, I discovered a little bit more about my audience, because with whatever content you produce, you need to know who it's for. And I sort of had an idea of who was reading my site and who was listening to my podcast, but when I got confirmation from the numbers, it really was eye-opening, because I didn't realize how much it was the way it was. And what it was I realized that actually out of all of my audience, there was actually 5,000 people that responded to this survey, which is quite a big chunk. 33% of them, 1 out of every 3 people, haven't even started a business yet. they're on my site, they're getting inspiration, but they haven't pulled the trigger for whatever reason. And then going deeper into the survey, because using a tool called SurveyMonkey, you're sort of able to highlight just those people who answered that question that way and see what all their other answers are. And of those people, the main concern was just the fear of moving forward and failing on something, the fear of not knowing whether or not that thing that they're working on is actually going to work. Because everybody, I mean, we all know this. We are conditioned to know that when you work X hours, you get paid X hours. But when you're an entrepreneur and you're working on your own stuff, you might put in several hours and you don't know if it's actually going to be worth it in the end. And, you know, there's also been a lot of this kind of thing coming up in other people's sites that I've been reading that a lot of people are getting excited about. So that was validation for this topic as well. And this is actually, if you go back to the 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss, one of my favorite books, actually helped me get my start online. There's a chapter in there called Testing the Muse. And I don't know if you remember this, but there's a little section in there about micro-testing your business. And in that section, Tim talked about paying for Google Ads to send cold traffic to a website that was set up for a hypothetical business that you're thinking of creating. And it was actually for like sailor shirts or something. And seeing how many times people click on the Buy Now button, which is a sign that that's a business or a product that people want. And then if you get up to a certain amount, then that either validates or kind of counters the idea of actually creating that business or not. And that was it. That's all he talked about that. But that was actually one of the most referenced chapters in the book, one that everybody gets excited about. But that's all he talked about it. So I wanted to take that to the next level and kind of create Testing the Muse 2.0 here, I guess you could say.
I think that's good. People used to do this in direct sales. They would actually place ads. This was before Google AdWords. And they would actually take orders for products that didn't exist, go ahead and write the sales letter, and then if it worked, they would start putting gas on it. Of course, that's illegal. It is now. I don't know if it was then. And it's still a great test, though, and I think that's a hugely valid thing to do, and I think people getting advice on that is helpful. But the irony that I see in it is what we were just talking about, though, and until you pull the trigger, you really don't know, even with the large platform like you have, even with this book. It's funny that it's called Will It Fly because until you actually publish it, you don't know. And I wish that people would understand that even Pat Flynn, even with the big platform, even with all the people that love you and want to hear what you've got to say, until you do it, you don't know, and you have those doubts as well.
Right. I mean, that's a big message in the book is the fact that you could do all this validation and give yourself the best chance to have something that will become successful, but you still will never know unless you finally launch it. Beyond the product to market fit, there's the even more important part, and which is where the book starts out with, is actually the idea or the business to self fit. How does that idea actually align with or not align with who I am and what my goals are? And this is something that really gets breezed over a lot. And because we get so attracted to the idea of building a business, we want to do what somebody else is doing, and we don't even think about what the implications of that are or that business type are for our own lives. And so there's some exercises in the beginning, some thought experiments to help you work through kind of self-discovery in terms of what kinds of things motivate you, what kind of work best suits you, and does this idea actually reflect that or not?
That's a great segue to my next question, because a lot of people say that they want to have a book, but very few people want to do the work. So I'm curious about your writing process. You mentioned that you've been working on this over a year. Writing process, people don't see that. They just see the book that finally pops out of you. So let's dive into that a little bit. What's your writing process like? I know with the blog, you say you can crank those out fairly easily. Was the book as easy once you got going on it, once you got a little more comfortable?
Once I started to treat the chapters of the book like individual blog posts, that's when things started to take off. And it took me a long time to realize how to do that. Not just to do that, but how to do that. So I actually started to break down each individual chapter into a different Google Doc, just so that was the only window that was open. I actually tried using Scrivener for a while, which is kind of the tool of choice by most authors because it's easy to organize and stuff. But I found that I was getting overwhelmed by seeing in the sidebar all the other chapters that were not done yet. Mm-hmm. And so I had to kind of take my focus away from that and focus on just one thing at a time. And that's what really helped. But also beyond, when I first started, the whole idea was, and I take this approach with individual podcast episodes where it's just me or blog posts, I just do a brain dump of everything that's in my brain related to in and around that topic. And so once I finally landed on a topic, which was a process in and of itself, then it was about this brain dump process, which I share in the first episode of SPI TV. And that is actually a process that I really enjoy now, and that is actually dictating that brain dump and actually putting that into this tool called Rev, which is an app. So even if I'm on the go in the car or something, I could brain dump certain topics and use my voice.
Yeah, it's like a voice recorder for your
right,
iPhone.
Right, exactly. But what Rev does is you can set it to transcribe all of that. And it's actually a human who transcribes it for you instead of just like a Dragon dictation software type thing, which oftentimes messes up and you have to spend a lot of time just correcting everything. So, it's pretty cool. And I actually utilize a lot of Post-it notes. If you were to look at my office right now, there's about 40 different Post-it notes in and all around. And these are for various things that I'm working on. But that actually initial brain dump step, even before you start to dictate, those ideas and stuff, I use Post-it notes to sort of mind map. Mind mapping is a great tool. I used to do it on a tool called MindMeister on a computer, which was pretty cool. But there's something about writing it down and having a Post-it note and being able to move it around and organize it in that way. And the book starts to form itself from there, because you could start to see clumps of things that are related to each other, and those clumps become chapters, for example, and just new ideas come out when you start to see the spread of stuff. And then you can sort of take one Post-it note at a time and brain dump on that on Rev and get it transcribed. And then all of a sudden, you have 80,000 words. And then the biggest challenge for me was taking those 80,000 words after this sort of brain dump and this method of getting all these ideas out. It was a big challenge for me to kind of just how to take that and turn it into something that looked like a book. And actually 90% of that content was useless. But the 10% that was there was amazing.
So you took the transcript then and tightened that up a bit?
Yeah, I did. But mainly I used that to just pull out those stories and those case studies and those examples that just came out from that creative side of my brain through this sort of brain dump, throwing up on your piece of paper type process, which is what Anne Lamott from Bird by Bird, which is a book that I read.
That's a fantastic book. Any writer should read Bird by Bird. And also, I really like Stephen King on writing. Those two books will get you very far when it comes to motivation and just kind of the how-to and knowing, like I mentioned earlier, that writing is a process. And we used to say in the music business, good songs are written, great songs are rewritten. Mm-hmm. And I believe that about books as well. Everybody struggles. The first draft always sucks, and it's always going to take a rewrite to get it where you want to.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And as long as you know what the overall arching message is that you want to, that promise that you want to give to your audience, that transformation you want them to go through, things will fall into place. But it's not an easy process. And there were times where I was staring at a blank screen for hours sometimes, and I had to just again get over the fact that as I'm going through this, as I'm trying to be creative, I have to just let everything come out. And even that second draft, when I was kind of taking that first transcript and turning it into something that was like a manuscript, there was a lot of just trying not to edit along the way. And, I even heard of some people who have gone through the writing process and have struggled with kind of using their edit side of their brain versus their creative side of the brain. When you use both of those brains at the same time, you're going to get nowhere. That's what I discovered.
Well, you self-edit before the word even hits the paper a lot of times.
Right. And so some people actually take the delete key off of their keyboard when writing the sort of initial drafts. And then from there, it was really getting deep into each of those sections, looking at them as a blog post. And then when it was like that, it was very easy because each chapter has a different transformation or a promise and different points and stories and case studies and data and research to kind of back that up.
With your writing process, were you working on this every day? Did you have, talk about kind of scheduling it in, because you're a busy guy. You've got, as you mentioned, a couple podcasts. You've got the television,
a couple kids.
Wife. Got to take care of the family.
Yeah, I mean, I was waking up earlier just so I could write. So I'd wake up at 6, and the one thing I would do when I wake up is after I get ready, do a quick meditation, I write. And I write till the kids get up, and that helped me focus too, because I knew that I only had a limited amount of time to write. And so this book was created in the morning by waking up just a little bit earlier and focusing just on that. And that was strategies. That's a strategy that I learned just from talking to a lot of other authors. It's like you can't add a 25th hour in the day, but you can rearrange your time to find time to write. And if it becomes consistent, you go in and day out, and it just becomes a thing that you do. And in the beginning, it was a struggle, but over time, I felt bad if I woke up late because I was like, wow, I lost 30 minutes of writing time today.
Well, how long can you write? Because I know for me, I'm in the middle of a book right now. I've got maybe an hour in me before I just kind of flake out and I have to take a break and maybe come back to it. Are you the same way, or can you sit there for 2 or 3 hours at a time or more?
It's usually an hour at a time, but I can jump back into it after a 15-minute break.
Okay.
And so what I usually do is I reward myself for having spent an hour uninterrupted, undistracted. And so and there's this other tool that I actually picked up the last couple months that has helped me a lot, which might be very interesting to share. I'll share it anyway. I used to find myself getting distracted a lot during my writing sessions. A lot of times I'd come up to a point in the manuscript where it'd be a little challenging, or I'd get frustrated, or I'd have to do a little bit more research, and I just, for whatever reason, we don't do that. We go back to email, or we go to Facebook, or we go to YouTube.
Well, that's when I start cleaning my room.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm starting to do stuff that I would never do. That's how much the resistance is within me to actually write.
Yeah, it's in everybody. So, interestingly enough, my good friend, he's the brother of Ramit Sethi. His name's Manish, and he created this product called Pavlok, and he's been featured on a number of news, casts recently, and also a lot of shows like Steve Harvey show on daytime television stuff. This device that he created, which he actually launched on Indiegogo, is a habit-forming device, or a habit-killing device, I guess, if it's a bad habit that you want to get rid of. And so this is obviously a bad habit of when you get to that point in a struggle in your writing, you go and do something else. So what this thing does, it's actually a wearable technology. You wear it around your wrist. It kind of looks like a watch, but it has a button. And you can push the button, and it shocks you. It literally gives you a little bit of a shock, a pulse that kind of just, I don't know, it trains you. He says, as you do this, if you catch yourself doing something you aren't supposed to do, you hit this thing, and it trains you subconsciously, your reptilian brain, to just stop doing whatever it is that you were doing over time. And this thing has helped people quit smoking. It's helped people quit biting their nails. It's helped people quit all these things in their life that they didn't want to do. And it's helped me. It really has helped me stop. And I don't use it anymore because I guess my brain is trained enough to not have to or want to do that anymore. But for whatever reason, it worked. And I know it's a little bit radical, shock therapy, but it worked. It's obviously just a very tiny.
Oh yeah. You're not. It's not. One flew over the cuckoo's nest type shock therapy, but
it was just enough for me. And then over time, I was like, I don't want to shock myself. So, okay, let's get back into what I was doing. That little bit helped out a lot, and those little things add up over time.
Well, I think just being present to that and being present in awareness, that's half the battle. So we've got a couple more things because I know your time is limited. You have a team. You're big on teams. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious to know where the team came in when it comes to writing this book. You've got, I'm assuming, an editor. I know you've got some people working with you on the launch, so it's a big and successful one. Can you talk about the editor process? How does that work? Do you just give somebody a finished manuscript, or are they going through that with you as you're writing? How has your editing worked?
Well, there's different types of editors. As you know, there's the content editor, which is the phase we're in right now. And actually, I'm going to be getting the next one back today. And then later after the content editor, they essentially help you with the structure of the book. Does it make sense as far as a timeline in a reader's perspective? Should things be moved around and that sort of thing? Actually focusing on the content as opposed to, the spelling or the grammar. That's the,
right. It's not like a copy editor or line editor.
Right. That's the copy editor or the line editor.
You're talking big picture stuff. Like, are you missing something that people are going to want to know about?
Right. And I didn't know that this kind of person existed, but now that I think about it, it makes complete sense, because when you're in a book and you're in every individual paragraph and sentence and word, it's hard to see from a bird's eye perspective what the entire thing is like. I mean, you can outline it and give yourself an idea, but until you have somebody go through it with the purpose of looking at the structure and how everything is ordered, it's going to be nearly impossible for you to know what it's going to be like. So I'm very excited. I hired a person. Her name's Anne from CommandZ.com, which is a highly renowned sort of content editorial service, and that was recommended to me by a good friend of mine. So they've also done work with Tucker Max and a few other people too, big name authors. So I'm excited. It's not necessary, I would say. I don't think all authors do that, but this is I want it to be polished. I want to.
You got a lot of people watching you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got to be good.
Exactly, and really the main purpose is because a lot of people are asking me also well, why are you writing this book? Why not just create a bunch of blog posts? And there's something about a book in terms of getting people to take action. It's a lot more official than a blog post, and it's not here to make money. If I wanted to make money primarily through this book, I know it will, but if that were my primary goal, I would sell it just to my existing audience, my website, and include bonuses and that sort of thing. And you could charge and command a much higher price that way. But by choosing to sell it through Amazon and self-publish, I have more control over that experience. And also I'll be able to have a little bit more exposure through the Amazon engines and their algorithms and that sort of thing. And plus it comes with reviews, and a lot of people look at those before they purchase and all that sort of stuff. So, I'm excited about that. And then there's also the launch team that's involved. And this is a lot of people who have been working with me for a couple of years now, who know why I do what I do and, that sort of thing. So they're helping me produce a lot of the sequences of events that need to happen in terms of, I got the video guy, Caleb, to focus on the trailer and when that comes out and how that comes out and how we're going to share it. Then there's, the launch team guy who actually we just hired for this process, Daniel Decker, and he's helping build a sort of street team or a launch team to launch this book with, getting sort of ambassadors to come in and on launch day really help push it big. And then I've also been reaching out. I like to consider the people who, like you, David, I feel like you're a part of this launch team because you're helping spread the word and you're willing to share it and that sort of thing. So I've been reaching out to a lot of my friends and colleagues in the space who I've built a relationship with over time, who I've helped at some point, and just trying to say, hey, I've helped you that one time. I'm working on this book. If you have it in your schedule, would you mind helping me out? And so far, 100% everybody who I've asked had said yes. A lot of people even moving things around to make it happen for me, which I'm very blessed about.
One final question, because I know that you had publishers coming to you, offering money, offering promises, marketing push, dollars, but you're self-publishing. Why?
Well, this was a big debate in the beginning, in my head and with my team and a lot of other people, a lot of my friends and colleagues, because there's still that prestige that comes with traditional publishing. I could get into a Barnes and Noble, I could get on the New York Times bestseller list much easier. And also, the advance. I've been offered 6-figure advances for some of this stuff already, and I've been approached by multiple publishers, which I'm truly thankful about. But I think that traditionally published book will come. It's just I don't feel like it's the right time. And since this is really the first product, I guess you could say, that I'm actually selling on Smart Passive Income, which is kind of crazy to think about after all these years. But this is something I want to have the most control over in terms of the user experience, getting people off of the book into my website and showing them around and showing them how I could help them even further. I think if I were to go traditional, I lose a lot of that control, lose a lot of my ability to influence and have an impact on my audience in the best way possible.
Well, it's good to hear that. There are a lot of people that are definitely seduced by the money and the you talked about prestige and what you feel is going to be like an endorsement. But to go out on your own, I mean, that takes guts, man. You're owning it all. So if it's a big success, you own it. If it's not, you own it. And I love that. It's playing with your own money.
That's why I do what I do. I went years studying architecture in the architecture industry, doing everything the way I was supposed to and still getting kicked out. And that's when I realized I needed to become an entrepreneur, have total control. And I guess this is just a reflection of that. For somebody who wants to watch the launch, find out more information about Will It Fly as it's happening, because that's the exciting thing and why I wanted you on so early, a month before the book even comes out, so people can watch this. Where can you get information about this launch and about the book that's about to be released? Well, thank you. If you go to willitflybook.com, if you go there today, for example, at the time that we're recording this, is simply a landing page to collect an email address. And then over time, it's going to change. It'll turn into a pre-order. Then it'll turn into the actual Amazon page at one point. But if you want to check out, I'm talking a lot about the behind-the-scenes stuff in terms of the team and the launch team and what we're doing to market it. I have some podcast episodes scheduled with my team members to talk specifically about how we're marketing this. So I think that'll be very interesting. If you just follow me on smartpassiveincome.com, you'll see that information come up likely in January, the month before it comes out on February 1st. Very exciting. If you're thinking about doing a book, watch what Pat's doing. He's got a big audience, and he's got a lot of people helping him out, the people that you might want to hire, and it's going to be done right. So anyway, I'm glad you finally did it, Pat. I mean, I've been waiting for you to do this book. So thanks, man. Well, you were a big inspiration when we first connected a long time ago. A book wasn't even on my mind. Yeah, like what's up with the book, Pat? How much you were doing. That's why I wanted to reach out to you. I thought you get a kick out of it. Oh yeah, I'm excited about. Well, I it's so thrilling, man, when you hold that book in your hands, and it's the culmination of all that work in 200 or 300 pages. Oh, so excited. It's exciting. So check them out, smartpassiveincome.com. Pat, I'm going to have you back in once the book is launched. Maybe we'll talk about the book itself a little bit more, and also what you learned from the launch, looking back on it, coming to a Red podcast episode near you. Thanks for being here, Pat. Thank you.
That was my conversation with Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income. Sharp guy. Few people have a better connection with their audience than Pat does. Check him out online at smartpassiveincome.com. And again, I'm going to be interviewing Pat more in depth about this book, about the launch, checking in to see how things are going, how things have gone. If you're interested in that, redpodcast.com is how to subscribe to Red Podcast. That'll make sure that you never miss an episode. And speaking of episodes, the next episode, the war on Christmas. Is it real? Yeah, it's real because I'm declaring it my war on Christmas. That is next on Red Podcast 187. Subscribe right now at redpodcast.com. If you've got questions, you've got comments, reach out to me. I'm on Twitter at David Hooper. Answer everything. So if you've got a question about marketing, growing your influence, becoming an influencer, at David Hooper on Twitter. Thanks so much for helping to build the Red Podcast community. It's been a great year. Looking forward to big things in the upcoming year. Speaking of books, my book about how to market via podcasting coming up soon. The next couple months, 93,000 words in. It's going to be huge. Nobody looks at marketing the way that I do. Nobody looks at podcasting and broadcasting the way that I do. It's going to be a great book. If you want more information about that, redpodcast.com will let you do that. The best way, subscribe to the podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for building the community. And I'll see you on the next episode of Red Podcast.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, the marketing podcast for influencers. Never miss an episode. Subscribe now with your iPhone, Android, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.